So a car bomb rips through an ordinary afternoon in Delhi. And just like that, all the old, agonizing questions about national security come flooding back. After decades of dealing with proxy warfare, you have to ask, is India's playbook still working? Or does a new kind of terror demand a totally new doctrine? Today, we're going to unpack a pretty provocative argument. Does India need a radical new playbook to fight its shadow wars? Let's break it down. There's this powerful idea that terror doesn't just whisper its arrival, it's a rupture, it's an event that tears right through ordinary life and can rewrite geopolitics in its wake. And in November 2025, the whole region was rocked by two of these events, just hours apart. Two cities, Delhi and Islamabad, were hit by explosions. And of course, the first question on everyone's mind was, are these connected? And what in the world does this mean for the subcontinent? Okay, so the first blast hits right in the heart of India's capital. The method, a car IED. And the location, a place with so much historical weight, it immediately pointed investigators towards some familiar adversaries. These so-called proxy militant groups. The ones operating from Pakistan with a long, bloody history of targeting Indian cities. But then, just a day later, a suicide bombing hits Islamabad. And as you can see here, when you dig into the evidence, you get two very, very different stories. The groups were different, the motives were different, the methods were different. The timing? It seems to be a really chilling coincidence. And that forces us back to the real strategic question raised by that Delhi attack. Right, so this is the crucial thing to understand. The Delhi bombing wasn't just some random act of violence. No, it was the latest chapter in a long, brutal story of proxy warfare, a war waged by groups like Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba. You'll often hear them called JeM and Let. These are militant organizations that have safe havens across the border, and they act as proxies in a conflict that's been going on for a long, long time. And that right there, that brings us to the central strategic dilemma that has just haunted India for decades. I mean, think about it. When a full-scale war is pretty much off the table, and your enemy uses these proxy groups as a shield, what are your options? What's left? This is the very question that forces you to search for a new strategy. So this dilemma has led some strategists to ask a really fascinating and, pretty controversial question. Could India adopt what they call an Israel-style counter-terror doctrine to fight this war in the shadows? So what does that actually mean? Well, forget about large-scale invasions. We're not talking about tanks rolling across borders. Think smaller, smarter, and way more deadly. This is all about using intelligence as your number one weapon, being willing to operate across borders, and being surgically precise to dismantle an enemy's ability to fight, all without kicking off a massive war between two nations. This whole doctrine really rests on three core pillars. First, intelligence as offense. This isn't about waiting to get hit, it's about actively using information to strike first. Second, an extraterritorial strategy. That means being willing to operate wherever the enemy is to disrupt their networks right at the source. And third, asymmetric defense. Now this is key. You target the militant group, not the state that's sheltering it. That way, you try to avoid a much wider conflict. To really see how this plays out in the real world, let's look at a powerful case study, Israel's 2024 campaign against Hezbollah, which is one of the most sophisticated militant groups on the entire planet. The timeline here is just astonishing. I mean, in a matter of weeks, Israel went from crippling Hezbollah's communication system to taking out its top leader and then ultimately forcing a ceasefire. But here's the thing. This lightning-fast operation was actually built on years of patient, painstaking intelligence work. And the pager attack, this just shows you the sheer audacity of this kind of strategy. This wasn't a bombing run from a jet. This was supply chain warfare. Mossad actually infiltrated the company making these pagers and turned Hezbollah's own communication devices into weapons against them. This is what intelligence as offense looks like in practice. It's incredible. The material impact was just staggering. Along with taking out the leadership, Israel's campaign destroyed an estimated 200,000 rockets and missiles. They basically neutralized Hezbollah's ability to threaten Israeli cities on a massive scale. And this right here, this was the end game. By taking out nearly the entire senior leadership, including its longtime leader Hassan Nasrallah, the operation didn't just weaken Hezbollah, it completely shattered its brain. It left the whole organization paralyzed and in total disarray.
So, the big question is, can India learn from this? And the key takeaway here isn't about just copying Israel's homework. It's about adapting these principles to India's own unique and, let's be honest, much more complex situation.
So what might that look like? Well, it means investing even more in intelligence. Everything from satellites to cyber warfare to spies on the ground. It means having the will to conduct precise operations across borders, whether that's a drone strike or freezing a commander's bank account in Dubai. And, crucially, it means targeting the militant ecosystem while very carefully avoiding a direct war with Pakistan. But, and this is a huge but, here's the reality check. Adopting this kind of playbook is way more complicated for India because the entire environment it operates in is just fundamentally different. In this chart here, this illustrates the core challenge perfectly. You see, Hezbollah, for all its lethality, is a bit like a mini-army. It's got a fixed territorial base in Lebanon. But the groups India faces, like LAT and JeM, they're more like diffuse proxy militias, and they're deeply embedded inside a nuclear-armed state. We're talking about two totally different kinds of beasts. And this slide really lays out the thorny path India faces. It's a path blocked by 5 huge hurdles. First, you've got Pakistan's nuclear shield, which severely limits your options for retaliation, because any major strike risks a catastrophic escalation. Second, India's just sheer size and diversity make internal security a monumental task. Third, its vibrant democracy puts legal and political limits on covert action that other states don't have to worry about. Fourth, the unresolved issue of Kashmir, which is a constant, tragic source of recruitment for these groups. And finally, the regeneration problem. These groups can always rebuild and rearm in their safe havens in Pakistan. So after decades of absorbing attacks, from Mumbai to Pulwama to this latest bombing in Delhi, we're left with a really powerful and provocative final question. It's not about whether India can adopt a strategy like this. The real question is, can it afford not to? In a world where the threats are always changing, maybe the biggest risk isn't trying something new, but not changing at all.